Okay, I'm going to talk about sufficient and necessary conditions in relationship to if P, then Q. Okay, so whenever you have a conditional statement of the form if P, then Q, P is always a sufficient condition for Q. P is sufficient for Q, and Q is going to be necessary for P. Now what that means, P is sufficient for Q. P is sufficient for Q if you cannot have Q without P. P is necessary for Q if you cannot. P is sufficient for Q if having P means that you will also have Q. And P is necessary for Q if you cannot have Q without P. So let me give you an example. Take stepping on a nail. Stepping on a nail is sufficient for feeling pain. Because if you step on a nail, if P, then Q. If you step on a nail, okay, then you feel pain. On the other hand, stepping on a nail is not a necessary condition. Stepping on a nail is not a necessary condition for feeling pain because you can feel pain in other ways. You can put your hand in a fire, or you could cut yourself in a knife. So I'll just do the fire one. You could stick your hand in a fire, then you will feel pain. Stepping on a nail, if I step on a nail, then I will feel pain. If I put my finger in fire, I will feel pain. These are sufficient for this, because if I have this, I will have this. On the other hand, they are not necessary conditions for this, because I can feel pain through other ways. I don't have to step on a nail. I don't have to put my finger in fire. So that's what, these are sufficient conditions for pain. So P is always sufficient. These are sufficient for this, but also, when you can also go this way, like I did up here. Whenever you have a conditional statement, if P then Q, Q is also necessary for P. Now that's a little counterintuitive because we're not talking chronologically. I mean, if you think in a chronological way, this comes before this, obviously that's not true. First of all, you step on a nail. That's sufficient for feeling pain. But whenever you have a conditional statement of P then Q, you can always say that Q is necessary for P. Meaning, you cannot step on a nail without feeling pain. You cannot put your finger in fire without feeling pain. So you cannot have these without this. So the feeling pain is a necessary condition for stepping on a nail or for putting your finger in fire. These are sufficient for this. Stepping on a nail is sufficient for feeling pain. Putting your finger in fire is sufficient for feeling pain, but these are not necessary. This is necessary for this. This is not necessary. This is sufficient for this. This is necessary for this. Let me give you some more examples. If I take a test, if I pass a test, let's put it this way, I'll say, if I pass a test, then obviously I took a test. If I pass the test, then I took a test. Right? Passing a test is sufficient. It's a sufficient condition for taking a test. Because if you have this, then you have to have this. If you pass the test, that's all you need to make sure that you took the test. And but this is not necessary for this, because you might have taken the test, but maybe you didn't pass the test. Maybe you failed the test. So passing a test is not necessary for taking a test because you could have failed the test. Taking the test is necessary for passing the test because you cannot pass the test unless you took the test. So you have to come up with your own examples. It's just so you have it. Just anytime you have if P then Q, it will always work. So just come up with some examples on your own so you could see instead of taking my word for it. Let me do another example. If it's a cat, then it's an animal. Its being a cat is sufficient for its being an animal, right? Because if it is a cat, then it is an animal. So if you have this, then you will have this. This, though, being an animal is not sufficient to be a cat because something may be an animal. It may be a dog. It doesn't mean it's a cat. So this is not sufficient for this. This is necessary for this because something cannot be a cat unless it's an animal. So let's say I watch TV, okay? So P will be I watch TV. Well, if I watch TV, then obviously I have to have a TV. So watching TV is a sufficient condition for having a TV because if I watch TV, that's all I need to know that I had a TV. If I have this, then I have this. This having a TV is not sufficient for watching a TV because I may have a TV and not watch it. But having a TV is necessary for watching a TV because I cannot watch a TV unless I have a TV. So if, let's say I promise you, I say, if you cut the lawn, I will pay you, right? So you're cutting the lawn is sufficient. That's all you have to do to make sure that I pay you. That is, if you cut the lawn, then you will get paid. I will pay you. But my paying you is a necessary condition for your cutting the lawn because if you cut the lawn, you cannot cut the lawn unless I pay you. Because I promised you, just assuming I keep my promises. Sometimes we have if and only if. The arrow is if and only if, meaning P if and only if Q. And P double, this is a double arrow. And what the double arrow means is if P then Q, and if Q then P, it means both. So basically it's a shorthand. So double arrow means if P then Q, and also if Q then P. So let's say if today is Monday. Today is Monday if and only if, so I use a double arrow. If and only if tomorrow is Tuesday. Meaning if today is Monday, then tomorrow is Tuesday. And if tomorrow is Tuesday, then today is Monday. Today's being Monday is sufficient for tomorrow's being Tuesday because if today is Monday, then tomorrow is Tuesday. Today's being Monday, though, is not only sufficient, but it's necessary because tomorrow cannot be Tuesday unless today is Monday. Tomorrow's being Tuesday is necessary for today's being Monday because today cannot be Monday unless tomorrow is Tuesday. And tomorrow's being Tuesday is also sufficient for today's being Monday because if tomorrow is Tuesday, then I know for sure that today is Monday. So anyway, necessary and sufficient conditions are very important. Let me say how this applies to medicine. Let's say you're trying to look for let's say doctors know a certain virus caused a certain disease. And they want to wipe out the disease. So they have to find out what the virus is. So what should they be thinking? Should they be thinking this way? If someone gets the disease, then they were exposed to the virus. Or should they be thinking this way? If they were exposed to the virus, then they got the disease. If they're thinking this way, they're looking for a necessary cause because this is necessary for this. If they're thinking this way, they're looking for a sufficient cause. Now, they better know what they're looking for because if they don't, they could spend millions of dollars wasting money, taxpayers' money, if they don't know how to do this experiment. What they should be doing is this. They should be looking for a necessary cause, because this is necessary for this. They should be looking for a necessary cause because if you find a necessary cause, that means if this is necessary for this, that means you cannot get the disease unless you've been exposed to this virus. It's a necessary cause. That means find the virus that's a necessary cause for the disease and then wipe it out. That means no one will ever get the disease, because to get the disease, you have to be exposed to the virus. You're not looking for this, because if you're looking for, let's say, virus A, you find virus A, let's say virus A caused the disease. Well, that doesn't mean that's a sufficient cause. That doesn't mean you can't get the disease from something else. Maybe also virus B will cause the disease. So if you find virus A, you find a sufficient cause and wipe it out. You're not wiping the disease out if virus B causes this too. So in the next chapter, which we're not doing because we don't have enough time, but there are different experiments. There is a different methodology for trying to figure out a necessary cause from a sufficient cause. But that's for the next chapter, which we're not doing. You could check that out if you're interested. But anyway, in this case here, you could see conditional statements, if P then Q. If you're going to go into medicine and medical research, you definitely need to know this, and you will learn this obviously if you go into medical research. You will definitely know what's going on here. P is sufficient for Q. Q is necessary for P. Let me give you an example of a lottery. Let's say there's a lottery and 100 numbers and one number wins. Let's say the number 10 will win. If 10, then you win. Let's say there's only one winner. That means if you pick the number 10, you win. But if you win, then you also pick the number 10. So if you pick 10, you win. And if you win, then you pick the number 10. So since we can reverse them, we're dealing with the double arrow. So if I pick the number 10, I win if and only if I pick the number 10, because there's only one winner. So picking the number 10 is sufficient for winning. If I pick 10, I win, but it's also necessary because I cannot win unless I pick the number 10. If I win, that's sufficient for picking the number 10, because if I won, then I did pick the number 10, and it's also necessary for picking the number 10 because I cannot pick the number 10 without winning. So, but let's say that we have two winners, 10 and 20. So if I pick 10, I win, and I pick 20, I win. So there's two winners. So this is sufficient. Picking 10 is sufficient for winning. So 20 is sufficient for winning. So this is sufficient. This is sufficient for this. These are not necessary for this, because picking 10 isn't necessary to win, because I could have picked 20, right? But these are necessary. So winning is necessary for picking 20, and winning is necessary for picking 10. Because I cannot pick 20 unless I do win, and I cannot pick 10 unless I win. But they're not sufficient. Winning is not sufficient. Doesn't mean I picked the number 10, because I could have picked the number 20. So anyway, that's all I want to say about conditional statements. This is in chapter 9. It's on page 307, 308, 309. So read those pages very carefully on necessary sufficient conditions. Whenever you're dealing with a conditional statement, if P then Q, the arrow, then you're dealing with sufficient necessary conditions. And there will be, on the final exam, I will ask a question on that. So make sure you read pages 308 and forward. Okay, that's all for now.